Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 4 of Inside Finn. I'm here with overall human being Morgan Smith.
Thank you. I'm happy to be inside Finn.
Dude, you are. We're Inside Finn, baby.
It's amazing.
Yeah, Inside Finn, inside Cap Hill. I think this is Cap Hill-ish.
Yeah, I think
It's
so.
Like maybe City Park kind of sign.
I don't know.
17th is different.
Blurry boundaries.
For sure. Okay, so first question that I have for you, and this is this is going to be a heavy hitter.
Okay.
So,
I'm ready.
What was it like running against, and I want to make sure I get my quote here correct, I think what the New York Times called the singular greatest student body campaign in the history of man, obviously referring to the Harold Chuck Norris 2017 campaign sponsored by Johnsonville Sausage. What was it like going up against such a monstrous force?
I lost sleep over it.
No, sure. Yeah, no, very difficult.
No, actually, it was. I'm honestly not 100% kidding on that because the race actually was kind of close.
Oh yeah, I'm still waiting on the recount.
I know you're still waiting on the recount.
I will re-enter to school and rerun the 217.
I remember distinctly us, Daryl and I, and also other friends wondering like, are they for real? Because like there were some circumstances where you definitely were not real. And it was clear 100% parody campaign, spoiler.
For sure.
Just sort of having fun.
Exactly.
Right. And then there were other times where we were like, are they actually serious? Because they have like
thoughts,
hundreds of people supporting them. And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Sure.
So what was it like running against you? It was an interesting experience.
Oh yeah.
I'm still jealous about the Johnsonville Sausage. That was a great sponsorship.
Oh, for sure. I feel loyal to Johnsonville Sausage for the rest of this. The only reason this project is happening is because of that campaign and because of Johnsonville Sausage.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't remember her name. I think her name was Sherry. And because I eventually got denied from, like, I applied to be sponsored from Johnsonville Sausage, and then they were like, all right, here's a number if you need to call if it's like really quick. And then I just called that number and got some lady, and I was like, hey, we're doing this thing, can you make it happen? And then like she was like, yeah, 100%, like let me send you some stuff. And then like 3 weeks later, I got an official denial from Johnsonville Sausage. They were like, we've looked over your thing and we cannot possibly sponsor this. I'm like, too late, Johnsonville Sausage, I'm in.
I'm in, baby.
And I know, honestly, we wanted to walk that line where we even weren't sure whether we were running for real or for not. It's like, is this the thing? Because eventually, like, some people would come up and they'd be like, yo, man, like, I've never felt connected to you, your campaign. I, like, appreciate it. And I'm like, man, if we win this thing, And then the most difficult, the most time I felt like we had to be the realist was when that debate happened.
Oh, yeah.
The only people that are going to show up to a student body debate are people that genuinely care about student body. And so I was like, we can't just say nothing. We can't just be like, It's like, what do we think? And it's like, I don't know, man. It was wild. It was wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, though. I think you tapped into something that is right, where there's a lot of people I feel like the people who are into, especially in college, like student government politics, take it way too seriously. And, like, I can think of the time where I was like, oh, I took that way too seriously. And that's just earned wisdom after the fact, years later.
Yeah.
Of like, I think I was a little too serious with that.
Oh, yeah.
But to your point, like, that can rub people the wrong way.
Oh, yeah.
When they're like, do you care about anything? Like, do you have fun?
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I think you guys did a great job of walking that line, But no, that honestly was a thought, too, where I don't know how much of this is like an incorrect opinion, but I'm like, I feel like for a lot of this stuff, like the university is going to do what the university wants to do. You know what I mean? Like, you remember when the student body was like, all right, let's divest from oil from our endowment. And the university is like, what's up?
No.
And it's like, okay. But like, we're the student body, and it's like, yo, what's up?
Yeah,
all
and?
Right, good luck. We'll see you next year.
My favorite was, I remember like, tuition increases is another thing.
Oh, yeah.
Always protests about that. Always like people getting pissed about that. And I'm like, I have told literally everyone.
Yep.
I've told every trustee. I've told the entire chancellor's office. The budget officer knows.
Yeah.
You know what they're going to still do?
They're going to raise
tuition. They're going to raise tuition. Of course they are. Like, what?
Oh,
There's
my
not like I don't
gosh.
have any power. I don't.
Yeah.
All I have is like.
Yeah, which is fun. Well, actually, so what was your favorite part of that? Because I imagine there's a lot of there was especially with the rest of. I'm thinking of my time at DU, and DU especially has, I think, a culture of people. People were always so busy doing things, and I felt like I was so busy doing stuff, and then I graduated, and I was like, what did I spend my time doing?
100%.
You know, and so I imagine student body is like a different thing that you had to layer on top of that, which made you extremely busy.
Yeah.
What was your favorite part of actually doing that? You know, let me live vicariously through you of what it would have been like. Honestly, I think Brian and I talked about it. We were like, I'm just really excited to give the opening address to the new freshmen. And then the rest of it, it's like,
don't care. Yeah, exactly. You would have done great at that, by the way.
Love to.
That would have been amazing.
I still hope to give an address
Absolutely.
to somebody somewhere. If you have any power, anybody who's seeing this, for me to address somebody, I'd love to.
He'd be great. I think, honestly, I think some of the best was like connecting with communities that I just hadn't connected with. And so one of the things we had done was like leaders assembly, I guess is what we had called it. And we just like sent an invite to all the club heads. 140 student orgs. I don't remember how many club sports we had, but like dozens of club sports teams. And so we all got into a room together. That was great.
Oh, yeah.
That was awesome. I was like, I know 10 people in this room. Right?
Yeah.
Because, like, you run
know
in the same circles.
Sure.
And maybe it was
even
more
at
like
a small
20.
school, yeah.
But yeah. But then there were all these student orgs I'd never heard of or had never met. And then there were all these club sports heads, which I had never really interacted with.
Yeah.
And then they were excited to be there.
For sure.
And, like, that was such a good vibe.
For sure.
Like, that was nice.
For sure.
That was, like, a good time to actually spend time just with other students who are also on the same campus.
Yeah.
Because, like, DU definitely got a little cliquey. And
for sure.
You have your close net of friends and you do everything with them.
And then you have the 1,000 people you've seen like 7 times, but like 4 times ago I decided that I wasn't going to say hey to you or vice versa, and so now we'll see each other for the rest of time.
Absolutely.
But we've already decided that we're not friends enough to say hey, and
you
I'm
just
not gonna
like
increase that.
make eye contact and then like move on with your day.
100%.
Yep.
And then God forbid you get put in a group project with them. And it's like,
Oh, no.
what's your name again? Oh, I know. I've had 7 classes with you. This is our first conversation.
Hi, nice to meet you. We've met before. What are you talking about? And you're like, oh no.
Yeah, golly.
Gosh.
So you did that because at one point you thought that you might want to do something political, not really true anymore? Or
Yeah,
was that
I mean, why did I want to do that? I thought it'd be fun.
Yeah.
I thought I'd be good at it, and I thought it'd be cool to do.
Yeah.
And
I imagine you were good at it. Like in
Yeah,
my brain,
I
think you
think
would be
so.
a good person in that
Thank
space.
you.
Yeah.
made plenty of mistakes.
Yeah.
Pissed plenty of people off.
For sure.
And
Par for the course.
sorry. Truly. I think I'd always been like interested in politics in a general sense.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And I worked in local government.
Well, yeah.
Right. And after college, and I think that was a good like teasing ground of how dumb it all is. Like
Yeah.
you've seen Parks and Rec.
For sure.
Okay. I cannot watch Parks and Rec because I worked Parks and Rec for years.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
like all the stuff you see, 100% real.
Yeah.
Especially in all the like the local part of the show, in the whole series, where it's like, let's go convince this, I don't know, planner that this is a good idea.
Yeah.
So then this park cap, literally that was me.
Oh my god.
I was like, let's go convince the planner to have this like development happen.
Yeah.
And I just realized like, yeah, they're like local government, local politics in general.
For sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right now, not so cool.
Yeah.
It's just, ugh.
Well, I
you know?
think one of the things that you and I both have talked about separately is the concept of, especially when you do your own thing, which is a whole other set of questions that I'd love to get to you on, the speed which you can go as an individual is as fast as you can move, right? And you're like, oh, tight, I'm going to connect this person, like we just sent an email, all of a sudden we're like making something happen. And by nature, I feel like government doesn't work like that, which I imagine would be frustrating.
Yes. Yes.
How? So this is a legitimate question. If you were, well, I guess what is if being a part of? Well, it's a 2-part question. One, what would you think would need to change? Hot question. What do you think needs to change in politics?
Whoa, boy, that's a.
All right, we are going to get to hour 6, I believe. Yeah, but then we'll solve all the problems.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, so what do you think like speed wise needs to change? And
Mhm.
then 2, what if that would be like a longer process, which I assume that it would be, what do you think is the best way for an individual to affect change on their local community?
That's second part is maybe a better place to start.
Cool.
And I think like from what I saw in economic development and then just, I don't know, being involved in the community. And in college, I had worked for the Interfaith Alliance.
Cool.
And like they did a bunch of homelessness work.
Sick.
And, you know, the tiny home villages here, they were silent partner with.
Oh, awesome.
You know, there's so many organizations. Just pick one.
Yeah.
Just pick one. like changing the world sounds great. It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's like you change one person at a time.
Yeah.
And that's like go work at a food bank.
Yeah.
Or partner up with another organization or go and volunteer somewhere. Like that's how you do stuff. Or like, I don't know, get 20 neighbors together, find a plot of land and do a community garden.
Oh, yeah.
Like that kind of stuff is real change.
For sure.
It's actually on the ground.
Yeah.
And all it requires is just saying, hey, you want to do this and figuring out how to do it. Like there's no need to, I don't know, change a law, change a policy. That stuff's important too. But like in terms of, I don't know, material well-being of other people in your community.
Yeah.
Aside from the bigger stuff like housing, et cetera,
Yeah.
like you can just go and do it.
100%.
Like you can just go and take care of people, volunteer with people.
That's so true. And I feel like there are a couple different things that pops off. One is the media.
The media.
But like there's like such a, you know, through a variety of factors like them needed advertising, how to get attention, yada yada yada. There is such a proclivity to be like, hey, this is important, this is important, this is important, this is important. And I'm like, not saying like there is literally no limitation to like all of the things that are worthy causes and like are going to take years to like actually deal with. But as an individual human, you really only have the ability to affect like 1, maybe 2 things, like maybe 3 if you're like incredibly on it. And then also you kind of have to not be against those things, but you kind of have to like turn off your brain a little bit because otherwise you get just fried as an individual.
Fried.
Yeah, and like if I would say, like it's I sometimes like will describe myself almost like a rubber band ball where it's like I'm like, oh, I move this way, like I'm moving in so many different directions, and then what happens? Like nothing.
Yeah.
And then you just get exhausted, and then you're not affecting anything.
Yep.
And also I really do. Yeah, it's like if you pick, you know, you and I are having a conversation right now.
Yep.
But I think about it later, and I was actually reading a book that this was really interesting. It was the concept of you pretty much can only affect change in areas that you have authority. And so the concept that you can increase like places that you have authority, that's like a slow, long process of gaining more authority in a space. But to me, if it's like, oh, tight, like I want to change like, you know, the United States politics landscape, I actually don't have any authority there, right? And so for me, it's like I can have a ton of opinions and it's important and yes, like let's vote.
Yep.
But you vote 2 times a year and the rest of the time, it's like, what are you spending your hours doing? And like 5 minutes of work is better than an hour of conversation.
Totally.
Or 6 hours of conversation.
Or say, however long this one is going to go.
Exactly.
No, I think you're onto something though, which is I think people, I think it's just a result of the amount of information that's out in the world in which we get sort of paralyzed by like, what do we do? What do we choose to do?
Oh yeah.
And
in everything.
It's important to, I think, stay knowledgeable. But for each person, I think there's a different level of the balance between their own mental health and how knowledgeable they are of the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I know people whose knowledge of the world is they know geography and like they know we have a president and who it is.
For sure.
And there's not much more than that.
Yeah.
But they're incredibly successful business people or people in the community.
Oh, yeah.
And then there are other folks who are really in on the Twitter game
For
or
sure.
whatever.
For sure.
And they're up to date on every single little update.
For sure.
And that is how they need to support in their lives. And like that's really healthy. That's great if that works for you.
Yeah.
But I think it's I don't know. I think it's dangerous to say, well, everybody needs to care about these all of these issues, whatever your issues are.
For sure.
Or whatever my issues are. I think it's fine if some people don't care about the same issues that I care about.
Yeah.
And I think some of the hard work comes from convincing people that they should care. Right?
Yeah.
And like sometimes you'll just never convince people.
Yeah.
And that's fine too.
Yeah.
Like some people are just going to be like, nah, piss off. I have other things to do.
Oh yeah.
Right?
And they actually might legitimately have other very good things to do.
Totally.
You know, and it is really just like through whatever random circumstances that you have been like raised in or whatever like proclivity, it's like I'm like, oh, for some reason I'm really interested in this.
Yeah.
That's where you should spend your time.
Yep.
You know?
Well, and I think the big divide, if I had to, kind of back to the college campus example, I think in our country, the actual big divide is people who are really engaged and not engaged. And I think the people who are really engaged in politics especially think everybody else is really engaged. And so if somebody comes with an uninformed opinion, which I don't even know what that term means.
For sure.
It's just an opinion.
Yeah.
Right? They get hounded. They're like, well, why don't you know all these different things?
Yeah.
It's like, well, they're just not engaged.
Yeah.
Like they're busy.
For sure.
They have their own life to lead.
100%.
And like I don't know, there's a lot of people here in Denver even who work extremely long shifts at Amazon in their warehouse and being monitored all the time and all the crazy stuff there. They're not going to be scrolling through Twitter all day being like, oh, what's going on in the world? Like they have other stuff to care about. And that's okay. Like we don't like it. I don't think it's necessary for people to have to care about every single little thing in the world. Yeah. And it's more important to find the other people who also care about the same things you do. Oh, yeah. Because then you can go build the community garden.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Right?
Being a part of a team, that is, so I was building, I think we talked about this before, that house that I was building in Lynchburg, Virginia, that I bought for $6,500 from the government. That was worth less than $6,500. But like at any given moment, it really taught me the power of teamwork, because at any given moment, like one of us wanted to quit because we saw the project like realistically. And then the other two were so like delusionally optimistic. But it was this thing where it's like, I guarantee you, if it were not for being a part of a team, we would have gotten none of the way on that project. And that is such a thing. And, you know, for me, I was actually talking to Brian Yoshida about this at Weathervane the other day.
Oh, wow.
Where we were trying to think about, because both of us are, you know, relatively social people, like have a thing, but trying to balance, especially as time goes on in life, how do I actually spend my time? Who do I spend my time with? And the beauty of being a part of a group of something, it's like it allows me to see people and like multiple people at once. And then also if you're working towards like a goal, it's like, oh, boom. From the efficiency part of my brain, it's like I'm doing something I care about with people that I care about. It's like checking all of these boxes, right? And it just seems so net positive.
Totally though.
Screw it. I don't care about whether things get done. Is my life efficient? It's like, no, for real. You know,
but that's, I mean, that's where the magic happens. It's with others.
It is.
And I think it's delusional to think you can actually affect change in a community by yourself. Oh, yeah. Like sure, you can lead it. Yeah. Or you can organize people to help make that happen. For sure. But like the tiny home villages here in Denver, that happened with like, I don't know, 6 organizations involved.
Yeah.
Plus the city.
What are those exactly?
They're I think it's like
I think I drove by. They're like kind of like it's at north kind of.
Yeah,
section.
It's up in like Rhino, and there's like 12 tiny homes. Maybe there's 2 villages now with each.
Sick.
And it's like it's housing for those who are chronically homeless, and another of the villages has a more particular focus on women.
Cool. And
I mean, the hardest thing of being homeless is that you can't get a job because you don't have an address.
For sure. Right? Yeah, it's this terrible cycle.
It's a horrible cycle.
Yeah.
And so and all the rest of that, and so that helps them. Basically give them a foundation.
That's huge.
And huge success, of course, results off of that.
Yeah.
But like that has affected the lives of, let's say, 50 to 100 people since they started.
Yeah.
Plus the second and third degree wave. Not a lot in the broad scheme of things.
Yeah.
But huge impact in those people's lives. And that took 6 organizations. So like one person has to find some other people to go 100%. And have some fun with.
And also it really does. Like I think that's one, I can't remember where I was reading this, but it was someone that like came to visit the United States in like the early like 1900s. And the thing that he was most surprised by was all of the civic organizations that existed. And I think that's something that not even necessarily our parents, but our grandparents, or maybe like the last ones that were part of all these just like random clubs, you know, like random groups of people. And I think that it solves so many of the issues today in the sense where it's like people wanting to be a part of like a community and like lonely in this epidemic that's going on. Also like depression and things like that, where it's like if you're benefiting people, that is like scientifically proven to significantly increase how you feel about the world. One, from both the perspective of like, wow, I'm seeing what someone else's life is like, and then 2, also I'm getting to be a part of that. And throughout the 60s and 70s, and like the American church collapsing and all these different things, but like groups of like 60 to 100 people, or even like 20 to 60, that group, I don't think of that many places that exists. And what a wonderful size of people, because like there are things you can do with groups of 20 people that you can't do with 2,000 people, and vice versa. And those small groups can just come together and be so efficient to like help out a neighborhood or help something like that. And I think it's Carl Jung that says something like 1,000 zeros doesn't equal a one, where it's like you have to do something, like anything, literally do anything. I'm a victim of like I've that too as well. But
I think there's a lot of necessary, innovation when it comes to like smaller communities.
Yeah.
I think obviously social media and the internet's changed that a lot. Like people find not necessarily belonging in the traditional sense, but a sense of connection with people distributed all around the world.
Oh yeah.
And like, not like I shouldn't care about my neighbors,
Yeah.
but people don't have that same groundedness that they used to, mostly because when the internet didn't exist, you literally only had your neighbors.
Oh yeah.
Like that's all that was there.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know, there's like a weird, repackaging going on. And I think any sort of traditional community has a lot of work to do to figure out how do we keep people coming back?
Yeah.
How are we offering support to each other? Who are we trying to bring in here?
Yeah.
I think, there's a lot of question and work. It's so hard.
It's so hard. It's so difficult. Because I think a lot of, in a world that is so, especially in the business world, is so focused on scale, a lot of the solutions are not super scalable, right? Like that homeless thing, you know what I mean? Like that homeless thing is not, it's like, okay, tight. How can we build like a ton of those in every city and everything? It's like, no, like that's a different, that's not how that works, right? And I think that, I don't know. I'm really interested. For me personally, I'm interested in what would it look like to be able to create businesses that don't necessarily need to be like insanely profitable, like for the owner of this business, but like are able to support all of the people that work there and are actually like a good fundamental part of the community. Right?
Yeah.
Like that is possible. But there are so many narratives that people believe that I also like go into as well, of thinking about like, man, like I'm gonna try to make something, how this is make me like so much money.
Let's 10x your business.
Yeah, and then
like,
so I don't have to do any work ever again. But it's like, but that's not what I want to spend my life doing.
Right.
It's really, there's a lot of like conflicting narratives, and it's tough.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I think we sort of grew up in a very corporatized age, and even more so recently, where there's just a bunch of big companies that do their things.
Oh yeah,
and so. The last real vestige of local business are like local restaurants.
Yeah.
And even those are occasionally taken over by chains. But like bookstores, Amazon.
For sure.
Obviously there were never like small flight operators, but so we've always had airlines as they are.
Yeah.
But even other small businesses have been disrupted, like retail, especially by Amazon. They used to have a local bike shop or I mean, even your grocery stores, there's rarely a local grocery store anymore in most cities, not in all. Like the bodegas out in New York City.
Love
their
the
own
bodega.
Thing. Yeah, the bodegas are awesome out there, right?
Big support of a bodega. Bodegas and delis, come on.
Bodegas and delis, come on.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a big challenge, and it's different than saying, okay, how can I 10x my business?
100%. And it is like I find myself like in an essence of convenience, where it's like, okay, I need this one thing and I need this one thing and I need this. And also Amazon, I mean, it's just so tough. I'm like, dog, I don't know where I would go to like look for like microphone cables and good microphone. You know what I mean? It's like, and also be able to find them the same day. And also I can check out like a bunch of reviews, whether these are like junk or not. I'm like, it's so hard to fight against that. And I guess a lot of it kind of falls into figuring out, almost akin to our previous thing about like what battles do you fight, like where do you actually like, where are you trying to support like local economics and things like that. And I don't.
Yeah, there's no really good answer, right?
Yeah,
there's not.
Yeah,
and I there Shopify stores are helping change some of that.
Oh yeah, Foxy Cart is another website. It's one of my sponsors.
Nice.
Foxy Cart, shout out Brett Florio, you're a homie.
Sites like those,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That are supporting independence
Yeah.
and direct to consumer, that they can bypass Amazon and it can be a good product nonetheless.
Yeah.
I think that's like next wave on the internet. I hope.
I hope. And I hope. No, and well, really, I think it's up to like kind of more or less like people in our you and I specific space for whatever reason. That's like the narrative where we've kind of decided to spend our time for now, whatever. For now, and I think that there is something. One, I think fighting against convenience is huge, just because we are living like an unbelievably convenient life, and also I'm thinking about all of the apps that are being created, like DoorDash. It's like, dog, not only are you not cooking food, not only are you not going out to eat food, not only are you not ordering food and picking it up, you are like on an app getting so much. It's just like max level convenience, and also all of those, they're all bleeding money. They're all bleeding money.
It's horrible.
Yeah, and you think about that from like a thing like venture capital. I mean, I don't know nearly enough about this, but I'm like, I feel like you are propping up a poor business model with the hopes of eventually being able to like dominate if they were only Uber Eats, and then that would work.
Yeah.
But like they're fighting with DoorDash and Postmates and everyone else, so they're all just bleeding money.
And Uber is still bleeding money. So I mean, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep.
It's crazy.
I know it is.
Also, I was in Mexico City and I took an Uber. It was a 10-minute Uber and it was $2.50.
Is that unreal?
I don't understand how it works because I looked at gas prices and I was like, that's not that much cheaper than here. Like, I'm like, I do not understand. Somebody's getting exploited. That is a fact.
I'm 100% sure of that.
Yeah. I don't know. That's interesting. So you spend time working with like small businesses and things like that. Is that a majority of the reason why you work in that is because you're like hoping to be able to support the small businesses?
Yeah, totally. I mean, especially from like a vision, passion perspective, like that's where the magic is. Yeah. That's where the fun is. Yeah. That's where you want to be.
Oh yeah.
Like I like enterprise is whatever.
Yeah.
Enterprise is no different than most government. Honestly.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Huh.
Same thing.
Well,
basically.
we talked about well, is like, for me in I think you mentioned this last time. It's like, okay, cool. You have like, I have the same distrust of large government that I do of large corporations. It's like, oh yeah, like Amazon, like that's like Amazon, Walmart, really worried. And I'm like, how's like the government, how's like the military and the DMV working for you, right? Like I'm like, it's just very hard. And I have like a lot of grace for people in that space because doing anything at that scale is unbelievably difficult.
Unbelievably difficult. I can't even imagine some of the complexities.
No. And there's also such a disconnect I feel like right now between like how complex the problems are that we have to solve and my attention span.
Yeah.
Because those are going in very different ways. It's like, tight, Because people are like, oh yeah, just like universal healthcare, and I'm like, that is awesome. But if we were to instantaneously switch, there is so much waste in the system right now that it's like that's just you have to solve some problems for it. It's really difficult.
Well, and all complex problems are like that. All systems fail. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the law of nature. It's just like how much tolerance do we have for that? Yeah, and how can we get better instead of best? Kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, and like make things like enough to get by.
Yeah, totally. Well, and so yes, back to the question of small business. Definitely, the passion and the vision on this is to help small businesses, growing businesses, to sell more, to make more revenue, to hire more people, to pay them good wages, all the rest of that. Yeah. And I think in economic development, there's two ideas or two halves of an economy. This is the way we teach it. Cool. So there's traded industry and then there's local industry. And so traded industry, if you think of it like a river of money.
Okay.
I'm just full river of money here. Okay. Yeah. And your little community is a pool that the river runs through and feeds, and then it feeds out, right? Money comes in through traded industry. Yeah. Because if you have, let's say, a manufacturer of great sound equipment, cool, they're going to be making stuff locally, right? But then they're going to be selling all over the place. And so the revenue comes from Washington, Oregon, the East Coast, maybe all over the world to your little town. Yep. And then they're using that money and paying their workers with that money. And what does everybody do? Well, they go out to movies. Yeah. They have ice cream dates. Oh, yeah. They eat pizza. Oh, yeah. All the rest of that. And so that traded industry fuels all of your local industry. Yeah. So the best case study in this is Detroit, right? The reason Detroit got into this horrible cycle of people moving out and the economy's in the tank is their traded industry collapsed. Right?
And so everything in their local economy.
And so everything in their local economy also collapsed. And so because there's not enough money in your little pool to help support all of the workers in all of the local industries, you have to have a river of money feeding your economy as well, which is why it's important to have both industries that are national or international and industries that are local. And I think some of the small business movement, I think, focuses too much on the local industry and not enough on the traded industry. Because there's really only two ways to get traded industry to your town. You either incentivize them to come to your town, and there's incentives, and they're unpopular for good reason.
Cool.
I don't like incentives, for the record.
And why is that?
It's just like tax giveaways to companies that don't need them.
Cool.
And honestly, like, so an incentive can be anything. An incentive could be a tax credit. You pay less on your income taxes, or you can defer your taxes, or you don't have to pay sales tax on XYZ when you build your building here, or whatever. Whatever it is. And any kind of company that you're relocating to your town, they have the money to afford that. So the only reason that you're doing that is because all the other towns can also offer incentives. So if you just made incentives illegal,
if everyone kind of like unified in the thing where it's like, look, like collective bargaining of towns, where it's like, oh, tell you, hey, we're not going to offer incentives.
Well, and the EU does that. The EU doesn't allow local
no way,
nations to offer incentives to have companies relocate, obviously, because it's not in the best interest of the EU in its entirety to have people moving across different borders all the time.
Sure.
And there's this very famous example in the States of Kansas City, where companies would relocate on either side of the state border between Kansas and Missouri like every 3 to 5 years, because the state on the other side would offer them an incentive to move back to the state.
Gosh, that's crazy.
So dumb is what it is. So the only two ways you get traded industry to your town is you either have them relocate, and that's usually through an incentive package, or you grow your own. And that's startups. Those are new businesses that aren't local, that are selling equipment to their, their manufacturing, their internet companies or whatever. Selling stuff all over the place. And that's it. That's how the whole economy works. You either have, traded or local.
Boom.
And I think it's so important to support both. And in my work, I do more like traded industry companies and people who are trying to sell more than just like a local retail establishment or a local restaurant or whatever. Because that's, they can create jobs and they can employ people and they support the community.
And in my brain, they're like two different sides. Like, I probably love, like, the Weather Vane is a perfect example. That place is cozy, dude.
So awesome.
That place is awesome. And I can't believe that I'd never heard of it before. Thank you so much for introducing
me. You're very
welcome.
welcome.
And sponsored by the Weather Vane. No, just but and so I love those from like a personal, like, in-depth level. But at a certain point they cap, right? Like the Weather Vane, like even if they were filled constantly, there'd be a certain amount of people. It's like, it's the Yogi Berra phrase, like, nobody goes there anymore, it's too crowded. Where it's like if so many people showed up, like, they actually hit a capacity. Where internet businesses have the ability to genuinely scale. Now I don't know how I feel about this, right? But they can grow to a larger scale, and then everything overflows in theory to this thing, which is another tough part, because is a hot take. Capitalism is the best system of things that we've tried so far, but we see obviously such rampant abuse of it, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so I think, again, to a similar spot of what we were talking about before of getting involved, it's like, oh, tight, like, you hate the way capitalism works? Tight, start a business and do it right. You know what I mean? Like, pay all your workers well. Like, create something, gain authority. Right? Like, if you create a business and you have, like, money to wield, like, you have authority.
Yeah, totally.
And then you can use your authority for good.
Well, and there's so many ways to do businesses now. Like, it's not just the old school, let's get as many rich people to fund this company as possible. Like, there's worker-owned businesses.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
there's so many cool ways to do it.
There's B Corps and public benefit corporations and other ways to, like, ground yourself in the public good.
Oh, yeah.
Does that solve every systemic problem that exists? Nope.
No.
Sorry. Nope.
No. But there isn't. But there's not going to be.
You're right.
Yeah. That's not coming. Like, and if we wait for that, we're going to be waiting a long, long time.
Long time. Yeah.
And I do think that, honestly, obviously, I am not saying that America is not filled with 1,000 problems. But as far as, like, a cool spot to be able to actually, like, generate things like that, like, we, if you are a person living in America, like, we have a very unique opportunity to be able to, like, create economic wealth in a way that it's just unbelievably difficult in other countries.
Totally. Yeah, and I do think that other like every country comes with its own pros and cons.
For sure.
Like and it's the thing that I think always gets missed is it's also cultural. Like Germany's famous for all of their insurance programs. I don't know if you know this, but like they'll have insurance for their bikes. They'll have insurance for literally everything. There's all these little insurance schemes all over, not just like the big ones like health and rental and auto and all the rest of it.
Van insurance.
It literally van insurance.
I'm
There's
sure.
like, housing, furniture insurance, I'm sure. There's
I
like
bet.
bike, all sorts of insurance schemes. But that's also cultural.
Yeah.
Right? And that's something, a legacy of Germanic culture.
Yeah.
That's just how they work.
Yeah.
And like in Denmark, in college, I did research in Denmark, and like very interesting setup there. But like the legacy in Denmark is their unions have a big role to play, but not in the way American unions work. So like 70-80% of Danes are a part of a union. But the union in Denmark is the people who do unemployment insurance, not the government.
Interesting.
And right, but this is also cultural. Like that started in, I think, literally 1899. Like they have a long legacy to bring us to that point.
Yeah.
And so we have to, I think, in changing culture and in changing systems, we have to recognize, like, I think you can only like push the edges.
Yeah.
Like, sure, you can transform. Usually there's a lot of violence.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, you can transform stuff. But a lot of that time, that transformation is actually just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and continuing that march instead of, I don't know, whole scale, systemic
for sure.
switch over kind
sure.
of thing.
For
and
sure.
and also, even when that happens,
It's not
we
a
still
given.
have all of our cultural legacy here,
yeah.
and people are going to be weird people.
Yeah.
People are just going to be people.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
Non-rational beings.
Non-rational beings.
Yes,
just
the
screwing
economy's
around
filled
all the
with-
time.
Yes, for sure, for sure. That's really interesting. What should we spend our time doing?
I don't
You
know.
Okay.
Other fun fact about Denmark.
Okay, cool. Yeah, give it to me.
So I know the big headline is like, I don't know, you pay half of your income in taxes over there. That's always the big headline.
Yeah.
Half of that, more than half, 27% of that 50%, like top line,
Yep.
so, is actually to your municipality.
To like your local.
So like national income tax is like at or below what we pay here in the States.
Oh, really?
And the way that it gets set up, in Denmark, they have a national health insurance, and they nationalize their hospitals. But all of your doctors are private practice. So not like the UK where everything is government run.
Gotcha.
It's like a weird blend
In
between what
between.
we have here and what the UK has, or like what Canada has and what the UK has.
Yeah.
And the so you pay to participate in your health insurance, but your local municipality is the one who takes care of the hospitals. And your municipality takes care of the schools and the roads and the public safety and security and the other. So like the cities there actually have way more power than our cities have here. Because in America you have a school board and a fire board and a police district and a water district and
it's all like kind of
and counties on top of it somehow that do judicial things and all of that gets consolidated and funded as one. But really half of the money that you pay is actually just to your local municipality, which also it's a legacy. They're a small country. And their municipalities are fairly close together. And so that works for them. And that's where, I don't know, I hear the news. It's like, we could do what they're doing. It's like, sure.
But there's going to be some other thing. There's going to be some
there's going to be some quirks.
Well, and that it honestly does. And some of this, it's funny that you're saying that because I've realized how whatever period of time you're raised in, like whatever thoughts that exist in our head, we are only able to exist as Americans that were born in the mid 1990s. Like you can have a lot of thoughts within that space, but in reality, we're governed by the period of time and the country that we're like raised in. And so, for whatever reason, I'm just making this thought up right now. It kind of seems that, at least you and I believe to the degree that a lot of the change that I want to happen, because I would love to. I want things to be good.
Yeah, I think we all do, right?
I don't want bad things. I want good things, and that's why I'm running for. No, it's like not bad, good, and so
the best.
we all want the best, you know.
Yep.
But to that point, like for whatever reason, being in the cultural context that we are as Americans right now, it almost seems to me that the best way to make change, based on the way America is set up, is through individuals existing through the free market, right? But like in like a business realm, and then hopefully, again, it would be great to be in a different country where you can just get taken care of by the government. But that's not our thing. In reality, which I think allows a lot of really cool options to be able to have businesses that actually support the needs of your community and can take care of local. But it falls so much more on the individual because we are such an individualistic society, and then the responsibility falls more on the individual here than it does in other countries.
Yeah, totally. And obviously there's pros and cons to that, right? Like there's some drawbacks for
100%.
single parents and those who are disabled and other, and I feel like for me at least, there's obviously stuff that needs to get fixed in that.
Yes.
Like people should have the dignity of income and work like that. Like I think people need things to do. And I don't think that, people should fall through the cracks and somehow become impoverished for a freak accident
100%.
or
which happens,
or they're raising a single or they're a single parent and they have children to raise, etc.
Sure.
Like it used to be that you could work one job and you'd be fine.
Oh yeah.
And that's just like not the case anymore.
Oh, for sure. No, that's real. I can't remember what I was, because I think it was, and I might butcher this, so if this is wrong, it might be wrong. But I think that there was something that happened when, I want to say like 1960s, right? When women enter the workforce and that becomes like a very big thing, which obviously is like, again, this goes to the nuance, right? I think both, it doesn't matter. I would be a killer stay-at-home dad. Macklemore has a song called Stay-at-Home Dad and it's fantastic. But we should be able to choose like that. Like there's nothing that makes like a man more so than women to be able to bring home like income in that space. But as a part of that, right, now all of a sudden you had double, just from a purely economic factor, you double the supply of something. What happens to the price? It decreases, right? So it's all of a sudden we have twice the amount of workers. All of a sudden, what we pay each worker goes down. It's that just is and again, that is an unfortunate externality that happens in a market, and it's tough.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if that's true or not.
Maybe, I don't know.
I do think you're. What is also happening, I think, along the same.
And it's also not a one-to-one. That's not the only reason.
The
80s.
Yeah. I mean, mostly it's technology and automation and all the other stuff. The robots are going to take our jobs, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just important that people who want to work can find work. And who can, right?
Yep.
And who can work. And that work does not need to be spied on in an Amazon warehouse for 18-hour shifts. That's not cool in my book. It should just be a humane job.
Yes.
There's a reason we had the Henry Ford's 8, 8, and 8, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, 8 hours of play. That's how that's what it was, right?
And legitimately 8, 8, and 8.
And
not
literally, legitimately.
No,
haha, just kidding. Can you take some overtime? But
sure.
We're not going to pay you for that.
It's tight. But I need you to respond to my message at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it's what's up, man?
But I do think, to sort of offer an alternate perspective, I do think that there's more than just the free market in our country to affect change.
Yeah.
I do think that entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, innovation can happen in our communities, and you can structure revenue around that, or even a nonprofit organization around that and find funding and grants and all the rest of that. But honestly, I think that there's an undeniable underappreciation of things you can just do as a volunteer because you care. And that you're just a good person.
Yeah.
Or that we hope you're a good person.
For sure.
And just volunteer.
Yeah.
And just I don't know, help out.
Yeah.
Check in on your neighbors.
Yeah.
Or if there's elder care options, there's food options, there's all sorts of stuff that you can do in your community that has nothing to do really
for sure.
with what you do for work.
Yeah.
And has nothing to do with there's a nonprofit organization you can create out it.
Yeah.
It's just you're just being a part of the community.
Yeah.
And that's its own kind of participation.
Yeah.
Right.
And also trying to figure, because instantly, like, it's funny, like the second you said that, there is some like position of my posture where I'm like, but I'm already tired. You know what I mean? Like, I'm tired already.
I know.
But there are certain things there's certain activities that you can go and do that actually do rejuvenate you. You know what I mean? Like, I think that there's so many things that offer false rest. I think TV and Netflix, and I'd say that I just watched I watched Dune yesterday. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
was insane. It was
Insane.
So good.
We
you
went
watch
and
it?
saw it. Yes.
Oh,
it
that's
was
so crazy.
good.
We're both on like the front end of
It was
that.
awesome.
It was every step of the way, I was like, yo, that movie was awesome.
Awesome.
It was beautiful.
Oh my God.
It was well done. I was with two people that had read the book, and they were both like, yo, that actually. And it's
Amazing.
rare. That's rare.
Amazing.
So I obviously I care about stuff like that, and I like it is good, and that can be recharging. But there are just like different forms of rest, and I think a lot of times, this guy John Mark Comer wrote this book called The Elimination of Hurry, and a point that he brings up, it's like at a certain point when you're almost like when you're running on empty, right? Or it's like it's a similar thing when you're like very, very hungry. It's hard to make a very healthy decision, right?
Yeah.
So you almost need like a little bit of like energy in the bank to be able to choose a good version of rest. And then also, I mean, he is like very big on the concept of a Sabbath, which has fallen off in all different forms of culture. But the idea where you take a day to worship and rest fully, but like at the very least for like a secular society to like truly rest, where it's not I'm not doing my work, but like on an off day it's like, oh, like I'm also doing laundry and doing this and thing, but like a day of like genuine, legitimate rest.
Yeah.
I think that that's just a very important rhythm for the human life, and one that is not practiced.
Yeah, and also to your point, I think for millions of people, so many people, like they get worked in jobs, or they have to work 2 jobs or whatever, on top of familial responsibilities or everything
100%.
else. And like, yeah, how the hell are you supposed to create time?
Oh yeah,
right? Like, how is that supposed to work?
Was that not the most privileged? It is, but there is such a thing where it's like it's not like it's the most privileged statement of all time. I just feel like I'm not resting, but genuinely I'm not. But then also like other people like actually don't even have an option of that.
Right, but I mean the principle stands. Rest is important.
Yes,
the access to that
access
as an
to
option is
separate,
not
for sure.
It's totally separate. Like I mean the ability for some people to rest, quote unquote, it's just not a thing. And then layer on all the cultural stuff we have as a society about like work hard and
for sure
all toxic productivity culture and all the rest of that.
That's a toxicity that I haven't heard that I am in support of.
It's you just gotta go, man. You gotta do some more. You gotta hustle hard,
hustle
right?
culture, baby.
Hustle culture,
come on, dude. I'm
right?
gonna go do this, and then I'm gonna write like 1,000 pages.
What a bunch of BS. Just like
for sure.
It's just not healthy.
And also, it is so tough too because so much of. And I'm sure you feel this to some degree, but the amount of identity I do derive from that is like, oh,
sure.
like I want to be someone who's doing this work and like, creating these things and making this stuff, and then it's like, oh, hey, who are you? And I'm like, oh, I do this and this and this. You know what I mean? Like there's so much of me that is tied up in that, and then I think I was talking to Verity Noble about this, who was my second interview in the band, but kind of that mix between how I want to be seen, right? And it's like I want to be seen as someone who's like doing well, right? That's just like a part of whatever is in my heart. That there's something in that. But when those two things come at odds with like being seen as doing well versus like actually living a life that is like flourishing, I hope to choose the second. But I often know that I put a lot of things in that first box at the detriment of self. You know what I mean? And there is so much pressure, especially with the internet and things like that. Like Timothy Chalamet, dude.
Yeah.
That guy's balling out like no one's business, right? He's like the hottest. I'm like, Doug, what's up, dog?
Yeah. How are you doing?
How are you doing, dog? What's up? But like, and so it's so easy to compare yourself to like 1,000 people, and that whole concept of comparison is a thief of joy.
Oh, totally.
And especially when you're comparing not to just a previous version of self, which I think is healthy. To like, hey, like, am I doing things that are making me the type of person that I want to be?
Yeah.
And lately, that's actually been a question that I've been asking, not like whether or not like, oh, is this right? Is this wrong for me to do? But like, is what I'm doing making me? Because we're made up of all of our decisions, like that just makes up who we are. Like our mental maps, like our neural networks are made by like a series of decisions that over time become habits and patterns, and that's who we become. And so lately, I've been just thinking about for myself, like, what are the things that I'm doing? And like, if I continue to do those for all of time, like, am I becoming who I want to become? And to me, that offers like a lot of clarity for decisions on what I'm actually doing. And yeah, but there's still a toss up between so many things.
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing that I've learned in the last couple of years is that sometimes there are things that are really good for us, like work and finding reward and meaning and identity in work. And then we can sometimes get stuck in gear, right?
Oh,
and then
gosh.
that's like the only thing that we feel like we can do. And the reality is sometimes we just have to shift out of gear,
what a great metaphor.
right? Like,
Yeah.
like it's not a bad thing to find reward in work. It's probably actually a really good thing.
Yeah, I think it's what humans are made for in a
Right,
lot of ways.
like-
Yeah, to create
like-
things.
Like, yeah, let's create. Let's get excited about creating.
Yeah.
And also recognize that if you don't feel like you're excited about creating, that's okay too.
Yes.
Just shift out of gear.
Shift out of
Don't
gear.
like force yourself into it. Shift into some rest or whatever else.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that goes for all sorts of things. Like sometimes seasons of life demand of us different habits and different things
For
that we
sure.
do, the different ways that we show up, and then we hit a point of change.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, time to shift into different gear.
For sure.
And oftentimes I find myself getting stuck in gear and being like,
What's up?
what?
What's up?
What?
What's up? Like,
You
yo,
said, I can't
keep
do this.
accelerating. Yeah, exactly.
I know. I'm stuck in this gear. I'm stuck in this gear.
Yes.
And I think just like alleviating ourselves of that burden allows us to say, okay, yeah, I can find meaning in this, and I can also find meaning in that. And like, let me just shift out of gear.
Gosh, golly. Just that phrase. Honestly, I feel like a heart level rest being like shift out of gear. I'm like, yes,
Yes.
dude, let me get out of gear.
Yeah.
Golly. Like, let me just be on neutral on the highway. Like, blare your horn at me. I don't care, dude. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know.
Here's an interesting question.
Okay.
If you were like talking to someone that's like, say, just like graduating college, what are you gonna tell them? Like, what's your space for people in that?
Well, if they're not going to graduate school, I'm going to say that their degree doesn't matter.
Cool. Yeah, that's really, really correct. Yeah, unless you're like
So
an
true.
engineer,
Yeah,
like
I mean-
something for real.
Look, at the end of the day,
What you and I studied
Yeah.
was not real.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like I have an econ degree and I used it for a couple years, kind of.
Yeah.
Hardly, really.
It's like
And
I studied marketing and theater. It's like I can just make stuff up.
You can just make stuff
I'm
up.
making it up right now.
Yep, honestly. And I think it's not a bad thing to go to college as a result.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can go to college.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can learn stuff and
Yeah.
and your degrees can be valuable. But to somebody who's just graduating, it's like what I've seen and what I've learned, especially over the last couple years working for myself,
Yeah.
it's what you can do and your skills that really matter.
100%.
And like that's emotional intelligence skills, that's hard skills. I like the term real skills
Yeah.
instead of soft skills.
Cool.
Like they're
That's
They're
way
real
better
skills.
term. Yeah,
they're
I
real
like that.
skills. They're not soft skills. They're real
yeah,
skills. How do you
that's
show
awesome.
up and talk with people and build a relationship and like get inside their head and understand them?
That's
Like
good.
that's a real skill.
That's a real skill.
It's not soft.
Like
Like it's hard work.
Yeah.
Like that's the stuff that really matters.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'd be interested to hear your perspective on this, but like I grew up in a household surrounded in marketing because my dad was a marketing consultant and now I do marketing work. So I definitely got like a dinner table education for that.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff that I learned in practice for marketing, I just learned from YouTube
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
or like read a blog out there.
Oh yeah.
And like you can do that.
Yes.
Like there's nothing stopping you from doing that.
Yeah.
And so I also saw myself, and really this was a lesson from like leaving the economic development job where I was really intent on like using what I learned and like working in this industry and having this career path or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
seasons change,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Like it's
Yeah.
okay. I think in our culture, what I see often is like we have a lot of pressure from our parents, and all they really care about is
For
that
sure.
you're doing well and that you're providing for yourself, and
Yeah.
that's
You're not
comes
like-
from love.
yeah.
It's sourced from love that
Yeah.
they care about
Exactly.
that. And so it can be a hard conversation when you're like, hey, I'm going to quit my job and do my own thing, or hey, I'm going to move out of this and change careers or whatever. It's all just coming out of love. Like they're
yeah.
concerned,
For
etc.
sure. They want you to not be like living in a van,
Yeah.
like talking to strangers or anything like that. They're worried about you, right?
At least I'm not a stranger, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
But I do think like it's okay not to use your college degree,
Oh yeah.
and I think it's totally okay to end up in your first job and after 3 months quit.
Oh yeah.
Like it's okay. Like you don't like it's going to be scary.
For sure.
It might be a hard adjustment, but I think we set ourselves up for I forget the guy's name. Wait, but why? Tim Urban.
Oh, I love Tim Urban.
Tim Urban.
Ah.
You know, happiness is reality minus expectations. So whatever reality is minus your expectation. So if you have really high expectations, you're probably not going to be super happy sometimes.
For sure.
And I think it's much better to say, let's just see where this kind of goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, to say to somebody who's graduating from college, like, go and learn stuff.
Yeah.
And like learn real skills, try stuff out, try it in the real world. You're going to mess up. Like, that's just part of it. I've messed up plenty of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And especially post-college. Yeah. And just being willing to do that is a better teaching experience than writing a 10-page well-cited paper.
Oh, my gosh. For me, the whole thing was, like, I also realized that I never turned on these lights. But that's okay.
It's okay.
We're rolling.
Yeah.
So for me, I realized that, like, what was so difficult for me is that I have such trouble doing things for no reason.
Okay, yeah.
And so once when I was in college, I was like, okay, Ted, say I make an awesome project. I got a fine grade. That's fine.
Yeah.
This is just dying in a computer file somewhere.
Yeah.
And then also the way that, like, human memory legitimately works is, like, unless you deem why something is valuable, you won't remember it. And some people are, like, really, really good at, like, tricking themselves to be able to be like, oh, like, I should remember this, like, for whatever reason in school, blah, blah, blah. That's just not the way I worked.
Yeah.
And so I agree, like, pretty much everything that I've learned of value has come that I can offer somebody, right? I think the things that are wonderful for college education, and if we do, I'm interested to see how college education breaks down in the next 20, 30 years, because I do think that there's something incredibly valuable about, like, a 4-year in-between period of time between, like, going from living with your family, where it's like you only know one way of doing literally everything. How do you do conflict? How do you do relationships? How do you do food? How do you do the dishes? Like, everything, you only have one thing, right? And to, like, being able to be in this, like, kind of sort of make-believe area where things are real, you're on your own, but also, like, if shit, like, really hits the fan, someone's, like, going to be there, be like, yo, that guy's like, what's up?
You're like, thank you.
Thank you. Exactly. Yes. And so I think that is a fantastic, also to be, in my brain, I am so appreciative to be surrounded by people like yourself, where I'm like, oh, this person is a wonderfully talented individual, and the only reason that I, like, know them or, like, know him in the space is because we happened to be around each other when we were both, like, young and could offer nothing for anybody, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Totally. Yes.
I
100%.
I love that. Honestly, I really do love the idea of, like, anyone that's, like, either of our friends right now. It's so safe because I'm like, I can't do anything for you.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm like, I can offer you nothing, right? Where it's like, if I'm like, you know, like a 40-year-old person that can do stuff, and all of a sudden you hit me up, it's like, why do you actually want to be my friend?
Right?
And now it's like, what can you do for me?
Yeah.
Nothing. Hello. Good to see you. And so I think you can be surrounded by some people in college that are incredibly, incredibly talented. But as far as the actual part of education, and actually David Perel, this online writer, he has a really, really it's a very long, it's a Tim Urban style article, very, like, thick. It's got some density to it, but it was talking about, like, saving the liberal arts, and it broke down really the difference between job specific skills, right, which can be taught, like, relatively quickly. You know, like, things like, you know, you have people, like, go to a coding boot camp and get like a job making 6 figures. Like,
totally.
That exists, right?
Yep.
Or it's like, if someone were actually trying to learn how to do marketing, like, it wouldn't take them more than a month to be able to learn how to run ads on every platform.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with people that, like, know, especially when it's not even self-taught, of being like, yo, like, if you were to go down and, like, talk to, like, a sophomore in college, be like, here's what you need to know, here's what you don't need to know. Like, that's awesome. So job-specific skills can be taught relatively quickly, but kind of this more liberal arts style of education, like, thinking about what is, like, a worthy life, and how do we spend it, and what is our, like, civic and, like, responsibility within relationships. That is that kind of way to think, which is what college was before there was this hyper, you know, focus on why are you doing this in order to get a good job.
Skills,
yeah. And I think because universities are kind of trying to do both, they're actually doing neither. And so I think that there needs to be some type of, like, landscape change where we decipher the two, and it's like, tight, what does it mean to, like, be a human being living in a community of people, and, like, who are you? And then also, how can you make money to, like, provide?
Yeah, so true. I piloted this over the summer with basically a close friend, but he's still in college.
Yeah.
Piloted this storytelling apprenticeship.
Cool.
And it was like 8 weeks. And I had just taken some stuff that I learned over late college, mentorship, real job skills, marketing stuff. And he wanted to improve his communication skills and writing and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But we also did, like, how do you tell a story? What are the good elements of a story? And then we applied that to a story of self. So like, what is your story and how do you elucidate that? How do you bring that out? How do you tease it out? What elements do you really want to focus on?
Yeah.
And then we did like a passion of his was photography and art. And so like, what's your story around art? How did that come about? What do you care about, etc.? And then we did one about his business, and he's like a personal trainer. And
Cool.
so, you know, what do you want your story there to be?
Yeah.
And we just sort of worked on that for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And like the foundational skills of storytelling and what a part of that better understanding of who he is.
Yeah.
And then really working through those story skills. Apparently went really well. I saw him the other week and he's like, man, that stuff like was so impactful.
Oh yeah.
But to your point, in college, I think everything that's like general education is actually just topic specific classes.
Yeah.
It's not that useful.
Yeah.
I'm so glad in high school I did some AP classes. I'm so glad I did them because I got out of the college level versions of them.
For sure.
It's like, I'm glad I didn't waste my time in that.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather do, I don't know, an intensive or a year long of like, who am I?
Yeah. Right.
How do I want to show up in the world? What does it mean to live a good life? Like those classic philosophical questions. But you go take a philosophy class and they teach you logic. And like logic's cool. It doesn't really help with those questions.
Yes. Well, but also it's like how could I possibly know what I want to be doing and how do I want to just like spending my life? What do I want my job relevant skills? Because people I think that honestly is such a reason why there is so much like depression and people's like plaguing, because it's like not only am I working so hard, I'm working so hard it's something that I don't even care about. And not only do I not care about it, I don't even see who it's benefiting. It's like a trifecta of just like a waste of human like life, like of human capital. Like good God, do anything, because I also do think that for me, I kind of approach my life as I do think that work is kind of what like humans are like created for, like to be able to like mold our society. Humans as like a species have been given like a very unique degree of dignity that we can like mold our landscape compared to the rest of the animal kingdom. And so that's a unique skill, and I think that's, to me, when I'm thinking about like what I want like the work of my life to be, like that's where I think of it. And then I separately think of how am I like making money, right? And so I feel that work, and for a lot of people it is kind of interconnected, and every once in a while you get someone that you can meet that's like, yo, tight, you're doing what your calling is and you're making money, awesome. For me, I'm trying to like solve the problem of how can I like make enough money. And right now my finances are so low that it's relatively easy, like grateful for the privilege in that. But like like how do I solve that problem of like making money? And then now it is doing the hard work of like, what do I actually want to spend my life doing? Like what is worthy of my time and energy? Because I am a human being, and I can mold like the surrounding with the help of a lot of people. What do I want to do? But I think separating them out into two specific things kind of helps illuminate the question. And college is just a brutal world where that isn't like, it's not encouraged. It happens a lot because of who you're spending your time around in the natural period of time in your life. But I mean, good God, like, I remember I took it was like my science gen ed.
Oh yeah.
Our midterm was 8 questions, and he went over all of them on the board and told us the answer before the 8 questions, and it was multiple choice. And so I'm like, all right, say somebody did want to learn, like, I think it was like an engineering, quote unquote. I was like, it's like, you're not learning it.
No.
And then my Italian class was like, you have to dumb down Italian to such a level to be able to have a majority of people pass. Then now when you're hopping into like your 2001 class instead of your 1003, it's like, oh, this was basically a waste of a year because now we're legitimately going. And it's just a waste of time, energy, resources. And the teachers, good God, like how frustrated would I be if I'm teaching a class of people that do not care, of people that like a majority of people failed that test, Morgan. Like 30% of people failed this test that within minutes they were on the board. I mean, like, it was insane. It was absolutely insane.
Gosh.
I was pumped with it because, and this is where it's tough for me, it's like I had trouble taking classes. I was just trying to get as many, like, I was trying to get as good of a GPA as possible because I knew that would get me more scholarship money. And so I kind of, and it's a bit of regret, bit of I'm like, I did what I needed to do.
Yeah.
But like, I wish that I'd taken classes that maybe were more interesting and were more challenging. But when I was presented with the option of it's like, oh, tight, I can get this and I can get an A because I can pay for it, versus take this and I don't know what that's going to be like.
Yeah.
I just chose the first every time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, different. And again, I also think that in that kind of make-believe system, for me, learning, reading even, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if somebody tells me I have to read something, I'm not going to read it.
You're not going to read it.
But like, if I like get to read something, it's like, oh, tight. Like,
Sure.
what's up? Yeah.
I get to read this.
Yeah,
This is
I
awesome.
get to choose this.
Yeah.
Me,
Well,
individual.
And I do think that college is a real disservice in some ways compared to the real world, because in the real world you have Google. And I haven't had to memorize anything in a long time.
No.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Like, and that goes in marketing, like
For
skills,
sure.
especially, like you just build muscle.
Yeah.
Like a skill is like a muscle. You just build the muscle.
Yeah.
It becomes easier and easier to do the work.
Yeah.
And so you don't you have to go, research stuff all the time. You just sort of figure it out, make it up as you go.
Yep.
And the stuff that you don't know how to do off the top of your head, you're just gonna go
Google it.
search it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's not, and that's where that critical thinking and information skills and like, is this reliable? How do I know?
Yeah.
Sort of like testing out if this is good information. Who should I listen to?
Yep.
How should I filter that information? I mean, those are really important skills.
Yes.
And even actually a business partner friend of mine, we're looking at sort of a trade school for sales because he's a sales guy.
Cool.
And like what are the actual skills salespeople need? Because nowadays it's not cold calling.
Yep.
Nobody picks up their phone.
Yeah.
Nobody responds to cold emails.
Yeah.
Like those things don't work anymore.
Depends on how good your cold email is, baby. But for the most part.
But for the most part,
Yes.
or the most part,
Yeah.
all that outbound stuff is different, and it's like, how do you build a relationship? And salespeople aren't taught that. Like, how do you start building a relationship? How do you cultivate that? Who should you go after?
Yeah.
How do you build your list? What does that cadence look like?
Yeah.
All of those are real skills, and the only way you build those skills is by actually trying to do it.
For sure. And by listening to the B2B Power Hour.
Yeah. Hey! Listen to the B2B Power Hour live on LinkedIn every
for sure.
Friday.
Come on,
10 a.m.
baby.
Mountain Time.
Drew sells out. I don't got to sell out just for myself. I'll sell out for whoever it is, baby. I'm a Power Hour supporter. Come on. How can I not be?
Thank you. That's Nick, the other guy. Yeah.
Cool.
That's
cool.
we've been talking about, because what we both see is there's a lot of good content out in the world for marketing and sales, but also in a similar way, like college does a disservice by being too narrow and too tailored and too topical.
Yeah.
A lot of the marketing content is way too tactical. Like, it's like, how do you run an ad? Instead of asking, should you run an ad?
Yeah.
And similarly, like, how do you design a great logo? Well, what does it actually mean to have a brand?
For sure.
Like, what are the core elements of a brand?
So what are the actual like building blocks here?
Yeah, what are the building blocks and the skills that somebody needs to succeed? And at the end of the day, those things are learned through experience and also through YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Honestly, like
Yes.
that, or podcasts, or
Yeah.
anything else that's out in the world.
Yeah.
Like there's so much content, and the best part of it that I love is all the people that you learn from are not the Kim Kardashians of the world. They don't have 30 million followers.
Yeah.
Right? They have like 60,000.
Yeah.
Or like 20,000.
Yeah.
But that's where all the good juice is, because
yeah.
they're experts in their own field, or
sure.
they have experience that you can learn from, or workshops you can participate in.
Yeah.
They're usually not too expensive.
Yeah.
And like, being able and willing to spend the time doing those things, if you're able to, like, that's where the real magic can happen.
Yeah.
And otherwise, finding jobs that you can learn stuff in, like, I think I'm of the philosophy that putting your resume into a batch of other resumes is just a really bad way to get a job.
Terrible. It's the worst. Honestly, I think the reason that I do what I'm doing right now is mostly because of my, like, one, I hate waking up.
Yeah.
And two, I hate not getting the amount of sleep that I want. And if I go to bed at 2 a.m., it's like I don't have to wake up at 8 a.m. Like, I'm a little sleep biatch. But, like, drill check, sleep biatch. Like, that's on my business card.
That's good.
But,
that's good.
but that, and also, it's like I loathe filling out resumes.
Oh.
You know what I mean? It's just like,
I
good
hate
God.
resumes.
Uh,
I believe I only got offered one job based off of a resume.
Yeah. The rest
And everything else is just like mutual connections or friends or building relationships with people. And like, it takes time to do that, and it's not perfect.
For sure.
And honestly, you're probably not going to find a perfect job sometimes, and that sucks.
Yep.
I worked an imperfect job. I've worked many imperfect jobs.
Yeah. And your current, I mean, anything that you do is going to have like a lot of stuff where it's like, oh, this isn't fun.
It's the Mark Ronson shit sandwich. Can I cuss? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
why not?
why not? But like every job you work has something that isn't perfect about it.
Yeah.
And like maybe it's the long commute, maybe it's the coworkers, maybe it's the work itself. The
Yeah.
goal is to only have one of those,
For
and
sure.
not like 5 of them.
Yes.
But everything is not going to be 100% perfect.
Yeah.
Like my current job, it's like the fluctuation of income is
For sure.
the potential sandwich.
And the days
there.
where you like wake up and you don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
And like also like it's one thing when you wake up and you don't want to do anything, but you know you need to get it done, so you'll get it done. The real trouble is like if you don't need to get it done today, but it's due in like 4 days and it's gonna suck 4 days from now.
Yeah.
But you actually don't need to do it today.
No.
It's like, dang it, dude. Because then you're like in this like terrible. I have such a trouble between like switching my mind off between like when I'm working and when I'm not working.
Totally. Same.
And I think that's to me. I honestly think that is one of the most difficult parts of doing your own thing is the ability to, and which is probably why I look so much into that concept of like rest and trying to figure out a balance of that because it will so quickly be able to take over so much of your life. That's actually a question I have for you. How do you balance? Because I imagine you're a person that wants to do a whole lot of different things.
Yes.
How do you balance what you want to do, what you'd like to be able to do with what your actual physical capacity is? And then how do you know when you're beginning to kind of like reach your limit?
Whew, that's a great question. I think like self-care, restoration, renewal, that's the wellspring for everything. And like if you can't take care of yourself, if you work for yourself, what are you doing basically?
You're not gonna be able to take care of the people.
Right. And you can, and I did, you can make it work for 6 months. You can maybe make it work for 12 months. Then you're going to hate yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
100%. And like, and the ways that you don't take care of yourself can look very varied. Per person. Sometimes like it's sort of like knowing yourself.
Yes.
How do you cope with stress?
Yeah.
Right? Know thyself.
Yes.
And is that you go out and party a lot? Or is it you go down YouTube rabbit holes?
Oh, yeah.
Or do you distract yourself with XYZ? Or do you just get so overwhelmed by all the work that you have to do that then you don't do anything? Right? And
what
it's
about
like paralysis by choice.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. All of those
Was
at the
this
same
too close
time.
to home? I don't know.
Up,
D, all of
How
the
much
above?
you been watching is what I've been doing, man.
But what's important in that is to, again, back to the idea of getting stuck in gear. None of those things are actually bad, right?
Oh, yeah.
Partying's fun.
Yeah.
Getting lost in YouTube rabbit holes are awesome.
Yeah.
And, I mean, being paralyzed by how much work you have to do sucks.
Cool. Yeah,
less cool.
Less cool.
But like ending a day without having done anything isn't necessarily bad.
Yes.
Right? It's just a day that you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And
the mental energy is big in that. Which approach that. Yeah.
Totally. And so I think a lot of restoration comes back from a willingness to set aside time to do it. And when you're close to burnout, I've been burned out hardcore before. That is so hard to see.
Yeah.
It's really hard to divorce yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is, the way through is the way down. Like you, what Richard Rohr says, falling upwards, you know, like you fall upwards. You got to go through the motion.
Yeah.
You have to actually burn out to understand, okay, we need to reset here.
Oh, yeah.
That's fine. That's part of the deal.
For sure.
But for me, I think like creating space and time daily is not really my thing, but definitely weekly for, journaling, reflection, reading, meditation, time by myself, enjoying these beautiful fall colors.
Sure.
Right? Like creating space, not to do nothing, like you, my brain will still run about things, but to step back and decrease sensory overwhelm.
Yes.
Turn off the background YouTube video or the podcast or whatever, and just like enjoy the present, right? And like being present is a great way to recharge for me. I also think that being willing to, I think time boxing is a dumb concept.
Okay.
I don't think like setting aside 30 minutes for XYZ is like a great way to, I don't know, create your days. To me, it's too much system anyway. I don't need that much system to run.
I imagine different strokes, different folks.
Different strokes for different folks. Yeah. But if, actually, instead of maybe time boxing, you could like focus box or something like that, where instead of focusing on a specific project, it's like, okay, during this hour or whatever, I'm just going to tackle the big project that I want to do right now. And that's it.
Yep.
And then after the hour's over, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And just for me, that's less of like an emphasis of like, come on, Morgan, do the thing,
yes.
right? It's more like, okay, let's build some momentum.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, what I found is if you do that for 5 days in a row, you're like, whoa.
100%.
Did I just do that?
Oh, yeah.
And I think just being honest with yourself of like, what are my limits? And for me, my limits are, I don't know, 2 weeks of, actually, in August, I will never do this again, but I had like a week and a half of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. work days. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And like, that was my limit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my limit.
It's
like, okay, I've reached my limit.
I will not be able to go.
And I watched myself, use the same coping techniques and the stress and like being able to be aware of that. And that's fine to use those things. You're coping with stress.
For sure.
Coping in my book, not a bad thing.
No, for sure.
You got stress to handle.
For sure.
And I think being willing to like reset those scales from time to time is really where the magic happens. And it's always gradual. Like if you don't hit that rock bottom or you don't fall upwards, you don't go through the whole thing, it's always a gradual shift. It's like, okay, let's see, it's definitely hustle porn. Which is like, what happens if you improve your life 1% per day? How long would it take to double your life or whatever? Right? It was like 70 days or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So I hate that. And the principle's good.
Yes. It's true.
It's true. Like if you do just a little bit, and it doesn't have to be in every way.
Like the small, like the atomic habits, everything.
Yeah, the atomic habits. Things like that.
So many projects exist like that. I was talking to my friend Eric Feldenstein, who was my previous interview in the van. And him and I were talking one time, and he just came up with such a wonderful metaphor where you don't like know, and he's like a fantastic musician, like really good actor, like, and being like that good a musician, you really need to like practice daily. And the whole concept of like, he kind of like came up with the idea of like fishing, right? And it's like, if you like the only, like if you fish every day, it doesn't mean you're going to catch fish every day. But if you don't fish every day, you will guarantee that on the days you don't fish, you guarantee you will not catch a fish, right?
It's true.
And so there's so much of that, of just like showing up every day and like putting like your line in the water. And I think that for me, realizing large projects in reality are just a series of small pushes, right? It's like that whole thing where you said like show up every day, and it's like you just spend like 1 week doing an hour of work a day, which is manageable, right?
Yeah.
And also like an 8-hour workday, I can't do 8 hours.
No, I
work.
can't do 8 hours either.
Like legitimate focused work, I could give you like, if I'm on it and like genuinely on it, max 4 hours.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
And that's most humans, by the way.
And I need it like well defined. Like I need to like have it written out, like what am I doing today?
Yeah.
But it is mind-blowing that if you are consistent on something for long enough, and I think that's where managing that is, because that's actually something I've 100% realized, is I'm like, oh, I'm going to have this monstrous Monday, and I had an 8-hour Monday. I crushed it. Now I've like stolen it from every other day of the week, and also I feel bad these other days. And so really, honestly, knowing what your capacity is, trying to figure out some way of like, I think of it as two different people. Like there's like the Soldier Drew and there's General Drew, and like hopefully like General Drew is able to like lay out like a pretty good breakdown for like what Soldier Drew needs to do. But if you do that and then you just like do the work each day, you really can do a lot. But it comes so much with consistency. It's so easy when you think about it with like food and stuff. Like if you eat like one terrible meal, that's not going to kill you, right?
No.
And if you get one awesome workout, you're not going to get strong. But if you consistently eat poorly, or if you consistently work out, that's where it happens. And it's all in the consistency of it.
Well, and I think it was Covey who has this analogy of there's rocks in the jar. I don't know if you've seen this before, but he has a very famous demonstration where he has these two big jars, and he talks about life and big projects, especially as sort of there's big rocks and small rocks, and then there's sand. There's all the other stuff that's just sort of filler. It's the, I don't know, Slack messages and texts and all the other stuff that you got to do, the stuff that we don't like to do.
Yeah.
And on the first demonstration, he pours in all the sand, and then he adds the small rocks, and then he gets the big rocks, and he can't fit in all of the big rocks, right?
Yeah.
He's like, come on, what, this is how most people lead their lives, and especially as entrepreneurs, like how we spend our time. We get all obsessed with all the little stuff, the filler stuff, and don't think about the big rocks and the small rocks. And then in his other demonstration, he puts the big rocks in first and then the small rocks, and then fills in the remaining space with the sand, and everything fits.
That's really good.
Right?
That's really good.
Really good.
Yeah.
And so even just thinking of your projects as like rocks.
Yeah.
There's big rocks and small rocks, like breaking them apart into smaller, manageable chunks.
Oh yeah.
And just it doesn't have to be prioritization, and you definitely don't want that gear to get stuck,
Yep.
right? You don't want to go into overdrive here
Yeah.
and saying, "Oh God, I missed my rock today. How can I?"
For
All that
sure.
whatever stuff,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, be gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
Have some grace.
Yes.
You're like, today wasn't a good day. That's okay.
Yes. Yeah.
But over time, consistently working on those rocks allows you to really take off some
For
crazy
sure.
projects.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Okay. We've been talking for a little while.
Yeah,
Do
I think so.
Should we? I think in the essence of people's time, I think I might just call it.
Okay,
I
sounds
think I might
good.
call it.
This is a great conversation.
This is a great conversation.
Thank you, Drew.
Everybody, Morgan Smith, good human, just good human. Thank you for being Inside Fin, my
Thank
friend.
you.
Dude,
Yes.
All right, here it is.
Oh, thanks
Inside
for having
Fin,
me.
Morgan Smith. All right, go team. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Bye.
Hey.